This took place a while back, while I was attending Northwestern University. I was driving out to see my girlfriend, who lived about 2 or 3 hours away from Chicago. I was basically driving in the middle of nowhere, on a very long, straight road, when my car crapped out on me. I tried to start it a few times, but I essentially knew nothing about engines or how to fix one. So I called AAA to send a tow truck. I was only able to give them the road I was on and the most recent crossroad I had passed, since there was literally nothing but cornfields and telephone lines around me. Only about 5 minutes later, after I called AAA, I saw an old pickup truck driving towards me, coming from the direction that I was headed. After it finally passed me, the driver stopped and pulled off to the side of the road. There were 3 passengers, the driver, a woman, and another male passenger. After about a minute of sitting there, the driver came out of his truck and started walking towards my car. One thing that really struck me as odd was that the 2 passengers in the pickup truck just sat there, facing forward so I couldn't see their faces, throughout the entire time. They never once turned their heads or moved an inch. The driver, a rather big guy, walked up to my car and started knocking on my window, asking if I needed help. I told him I was fine, but he kept knocking. I said to him that a tow truck was on its way right now. Then he started to grab the door handle to open the door, but thankfully, I had locked it when I saw him coming. Something just didn't feel right. I said to him, "What are you doing, man?" I said I'm fine. Then all of a sudden, he stopped pulling at the door handle and paused for a second. He looked in both directions down the road, and it seemed like he was hesitating about something. Then he muttered one word, and that was what scared me the most. At barely a whisper, he muttered under his breath, "Lucky." I could hardly make out what he had said at the time. Then he stared at me for a good 15 seconds, went back to his truck, and drove off. But instead of driving down the road in the direction he was headed, he drove back the way they came. The road was a good 1 to 2 miles long. I never understood why he would drive that far down the road to my car if he wasn't intending to pass by. I also found myself thinking about those 2 passengers. A typical reaction would be to turn around and watch the interaction between him and I. They literally didn't move an inch. It makes me wonder if they were even alive. This happened to me 3 months ago when I was making the 2-hour drive back to my house from visiting my parents. It was around 11 p.m. About 20 minutes into my drive, my car began to stutter and there was a vibration coming from where the engine was. I decided to pull over. As soon as I came to a stop, the car died, almost in a, "oh thank God the drive is finally over" kind of way. It was kind of strange, I thought to myself, because I hadn't had any issues with the car since I bought it a year ago. It was brand new. I hit the handle to pop the hood and hopped out, preparing myself for the worst and expecting for there to be sparks flying and smoke billowing as soon as I opened the hood. To my relief, there wasn't. I got back in to try to start it, but nothing. I tried several more times, but gave up as I was afraid of draining the battery. There was almost nothing on this road I was on. It was 2-lane. To my immediate right, there was a drop-off from the shoulder, which led to a barbed wire fence, then open field as far as the eye could see. On the left, there was the other lane, no shoulder on that side, and dense trees. You couldn't see anything through these trees, so I suspect they went on for some time. I grabbed my phone lying in the cubby underneath the radio and dialed my parents. No answer. Right at that moment, I could hear footsteps. There was someone on the opposite side of the road, walking in the direction of the car. I couldn't make out anything really other than I could see the faint outline of a figure walking slowly in my direction. I jumped in the car and locked the doors. The figure made it around 20 feet from my car and stopped and looked in my direction. Is that his face? I thought. What the hell? He walked over to my window, and I could plainly see he was wearing an old, tattered, scratched-up-looking white mask. There were dark scratches around the eyes and mouth. I was actually surprised at my reaction when I realized what I was seeing. I laughed. I literally laughed and said out loud, "Are you kidding me? I'm broke down on some dark-ass road, and some dude walks up to me wearing a mask. Really? I mean really." That feeling faded though, when I could suddenly hear the sound of breathing through the mask, faintly coming through the rolled-up window. That sound, for whatever reason, was what snapped me back into reality to what was actually happening. I just stared at him. He stared back. Zero movement. He slammed his hand on the glass and then began petting my window, his head now cocked at an angle. He looked to have black gloves on. I asked loudly, "What do you want?" He stopped petting and backed a few steps away from the car and brought his arm straight out in front of him, with his finger pointing at me. I began to shake all over. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was the fight or flight instinct taking over or something. I stared him down for what seemed like eternity, and he once again became a statue that didn't move, still pointing. Suddenly, I remembered, I have a phone. Call the police. It's maddening and crazy what we forget in the heat of things. The simple answer would be to call the police. But it's like my brain was putting all its effort into trying to figure out what the hell was going on, and also keeping all my muscles on a hair trigger should he make any drastic moves. I dialed for help, but there was no sound on the other end. Literally, I dialed the phone and there was just silence. No ring, not background noise, nothing. The call must have failed. I seen him move, and I jerked my head to look at him again. He took out what looked to be a pocket knife and opened it. He made his way back to my window and slowly petted the window 3 to 4 times before making his way to the back of my car. That's when I heard it. The sound of him jamming his knife into my back left tire. I immediately began searching for him in the side view mirror, but I couldn't see him. I turned my body all the way around in the seat to try to find him again. He was nowhere. Panic began to overcome me. I dialed for the police again, and this time the call went through. I hysterically told them what was going on. I didn't know specifically where I was, but I was able to give enough of an idea to the person on the phone that they felt they could find me. My head was on a swivel while waiting for them to arrive. I was constantly doing a 360 in my seat to try to find and see him again. 3 police cars arrived, and I opened my door to step out and meet them. I looked over my tire and the rest of my car, but didn't see anything. He had taken the knife with him. I decided to leave my car with its flashers on and come back in the morning with my parents to retrieve it. The police drove me to the police station where my parents picked me up. Mom and Dad did a pretty good job of calming me down, telling me that road has a couple of really weird people that live near it. One probably just got drunk and set out on foot, for God knows why. I didn't sleep much that night. No one would after that. We made it back to the car early the next morning with a tow truck. I gathered some of my things out of the car I would need. I opened the trunk to get my other bag out that had my clothes in it. I went dizzy in the head when I opened the trunk and saw the state of it. My clothes were made into a pile, and on top of them was the mask. Just underneath the mask was an old electric bill of mine. The address was circled with a smiley face next to it. It looked and smelled as if Copenhagen or chewing tobacco was used to make the marks. He went through my car after we left and found that old bill with my address on it. Jesus. No, I didn't move, if that's what you were thinking. I did nothing. I live in a safe, gated community with cameras. It's been 3 months now. Nothing has happened so far.